I heard the announcement echo over the Denver airport speakers before I realized my parents were gone. I was 5 years old, holding a tiny pink backpack, watching a crowd move like a river I wasn't part of. One moment, my mother's hand was wrapped around mine, and the next, I was staring at a wall of strangers' legs and coats and rolling suitcases. I remember turning in circles, calling out, "Mom? Dad," in this shaky voice that didn't sound like mine. People glanced down at me, then kept walking. I still remember the cold blast of air whenever the automatic doors opened. I remember how small I felt. A TSA agent eventually crouched down to my level. "Sweetheart, where are your parents?" I didn't know how to answer. And that was the first moment I understood what abandonment feels like, not a loud moment, but a hollow one. A quiet kind of breaking. I didn't know then that I'd spend years wondering why they left me. Or that someday they'd come back, not with love, but with a lawsuit for $5.5 million. I was placed into foster care that night. The kind of temporary home where doors stick, and the TV hums so loud you can't think. I was shy, always carrying my little backpack like a shield. I didn't speak much. People figured I'd stay that way. Then he walked in. His name was Daniel Pierce. A retired attorney from Colorado Springs, in his early 50s, with warm eyes and a soft voice that made you feel steady just by being next to him. He'd spent his life in courtrooms helping kids who had no one. And one day, he decided he didn't just want to help a child, he wanted to raise one. He visited me 3 times before I said a word to him. But on the 4th visit, when he sat cross-legged on the floor and pushed a coloring book toward me, I whispered, "Did you really choose me?" He didn't hesitate. "I did. And I always will." That was the moment my life split in two, the part before him and the part after. He adopted me 6 months later. He taught me to breathe deeply when I panicked, to speak slowly when I was afraid, and to read people, not to fear them. He used to say, "Mandy, paperwork is just the adult world's way of telling the truth." I didn't know those words would one day save me. And if you've ever had someone choose you when they didn't have to, hit like or tell me where you're watching from. Some moments stay with you forever. Life with Dad wasn't fancy. It was stable. Simple. Safe. Colorado Springs felt like the kind of place where even the wind took its time. Our home had a wraparound porch, mismatched chairs, and shelves overflowing with his old case files. He taught me how to cook eggs without burning them, how to stand up straight even when I didn't feel strong, and how to treat my own heart kindly. Every birthday, he did the same thing. He'd hand me a handwritten note that always ended with, "You were never abandoned. You were redirected." Still, late at night, I sometimes replayed that airport scene in my head. The sound of suitcase wheels. The cold air. The echo of my name not being answered. Dad always sensed when it happened. He'd sit beside me quietly and say, "Your past does not get the final ruling. You do." Those words would matter later. Because I'd soon face people who believed they could rewrite my story. And I had no idea the return was already in motion. I was 28 when the letter arrived. A thick white envelope with a return address I didn't recognize. Dad had passed away the previous year, quietly, in his sleep, surrounded by photos of us. Losing him felt like the world had tilted and forgotten to straighten. But this envelope. It felt like something else. A different kind of tilt. Inside was a formal notice. To Amanda Pierce, regarding the estate of Daniel Pierce and the legal claim from your biological parents, Melissa and Andrew Hart. My hands shook. I hadn't heard their names in decades. I'd stopped saying them out loud. They were the ghosts whose shadows I'd learned to outrun. The letter continued. Plaintiffs allege entitlement to inheritance funds totaling $5,500,000. I laughed out loud at first. A sharp, ugly sound. These people hadn't raised me. They hadn't looked for me. They had abandoned me without a backward glance. And now they wanted my father's estate? If you've ever had someone try to take credit, or money, from a life they never helped build, comment I know this feeling. Because this letter? It was just the beginning. Their lawyer requested a preliminary meeting. I didn't want to go. But a part of me needed to face them, to see if they still had the same eyes, the same expressions, the same ability to twist my insides without speaking. We met in a small legal office in Denver. The kind with sterile walls and chairs that made you feel guilty for sitting. They walked in as if we were old friends reuniting. My biological mother spoke first. Mandy. Look at you. You grew up so well. I felt my stomach flip. She said it like she was complimenting a plant someone else had watered. Then my father added, we always knew you'd land on your feet. A private humiliation bloomed quietly in my chest, and I heard myself whisper. You left me in an airport. My mother paused only for a second. We were overwhelmed. Young. Things were complicated. Things weren't complicated. They walked away. That was it. And now, their lawyer cut in smoothly, were simply asking for the portion of the estate that would have reasonably belonged to them, had circumstances been different. I stared at him. Circumstances? I said. You mean abandonment? My father flinched, but my mother didn't. Their lawyer slid a stack of papers toward me. We'll be pursuing this formally. My fingers brushed the top sheet. I saw the amount again, $5.5 million. What they didn't know was that my adoptive father, the attorney they underestimated, had prepared me for this exact kind of betrayal. Grief had kept me from opening Dad's file cabinet for months after he passed. But now I did. The metal drawer creaked open, and there it was. A beige folder labeled Mandy, Guardian Documentation and Rights. I sat on the floor and spread out everything. My adoption papers. His journals. Notes in his precise handwriting. Printouts of public records about my biological parents, stuff he must have pulled decades ago. And in the back, clipped neatly, was a letter. Addressed to me. I opened it with trembling hands. If you are reading this, it means someone believes they have claim to you or to what I leave behind. They do not. My breath caught. Mandy, you were legally abandoned. I completed every step to protect your future. Use the paperwork. Use the truth. And then his final line. Remember, paperwork tells the truth adults try to hide. I felt something shift in me. A slow, rising defiance. The kind that comes from finally standing on the ground someone tried to take from you. It was time to fight, not with anger, but with documents. The next days blurred together in a haze of highlighters, scanning, and late-night coffee. I gathered. The airport abandonment report. The foster care intake form. Witness statements. Termination of parental rights filings. Adoption finalization records. Dad's written affidavit stored with the adoption agency. A notarized statement he'd added later, predicting potential interference. Everything was meticulous. Dad had known the law like other men knew sports stats. He'd anticipated the world. But the strongest piece wasn't legal, it was emotional. A social worker's handwritten note from that night in the airport. Child appears confused. States, my parents said they'll be right back. Parents not located. I felt tears burn my eyes. That little girl never got an explanation. She deserved justice. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself with nothing but scraps of truth, tap like. It tells the algorithm that stories like this matter. Their legal team pushed for mediation. They assumed I would fold. They assumed I was still the quiet, abandoned girl too scared to make noise. I walked into the Denver Mediation Center in a pressed blazer and steady shoes. But inside, my heart was thundering. They smiled when they saw me. My biological mother reached for my arm. "Mandy, honey?" I stepped back. The judge-like mediator began the session. Their lawyer explained their claim. Had Mandy not been adopted, her parents would have reasonably benefited from Daniel Pierce's success and estate. Therefore, they have standing. The audacity made my jaw tighten. When it was my turn, I opened Dad's folder. And I said calmly, "I will not be paying strangers who left me in an airport." My mother gasped. My father's face reddened. Then I slid the first stack of documents forward. Airport abandonment report. Another. Termination of parental rights. Another. Finalized adoption decree dissolving all legal ties. Their lawyer tried to regain footing. Intent matters? Your client's intent, I said, was to walk away. And then I placed the final paper down. Dad's notarized affidavit. The mediator read it silently. Then again. Then looked up. "This is extremely clear," he said. "Your claim may not have standing." My mother's face collapsed into something between shock and anger. But they weren't giving up, not yet. And their next move was lower than anything before. When lawsuits fail, manipulators turn to attention. Within a week, my biological parents created a GoFundMe titled, "Help Us Reunite with Our Daughter, We Were Forced Away." They posted old pictures of themselves, not of me. They said I'd been brainwashed by my adoptive father. They claimed they never meant to leave me. People started sharing it. Commenting. Asking why I wouldn't help my real parents. Real parents. I felt my throat close every time I saw that phrase. I wasn't angry, I was humiliated. Quietly, painfully humiliated. The kind where you sit alone in your car and stare at the steering wheel because you don't know whether to scream or sob. But humiliation is a strange thing. It doesn't break you. It shapes the weapon you eventually use. And I was done being quiet. The turning point wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a big speech. It was me standing in front of the bathroom mirror one morning, looking at my reflection with swollen eyes and whispered, "I'm done begging people who abandoned me to leave me alone." That was the moment I snapped the thread of fear that had kept me small. I wasn't 5 anymore. I wasn't lost in an airport. I wasn't waiting to be chosen. I had a father who loved me fiercely, even from the grave. And I had documents that told the truth. If you've ever had that moment, where you finally choose yourself, comment, "I'm done apologizing." Because this moment right here changed everything. I gathered every document and made a single PDF file. I titled it, "Statement of Facts Regarding the Abandonment of Amanda Pierce." Then I sent it to the mediator, their attorney, the GoFundMe platform, the Colorado State Court, and, yes, the local news reporter covering family reunification stories. Inside, I included Dad's affidavit, the social worker note, the termination papers, the entire legal chain establishing that they were no longer, legally or morally, my parents. When GoFundMe reviewed the file, their campaign was removed within 48 hours. The news reporter emailed me an apology. Their lawyer went silent. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I just breathed. For the first time in months. They pushed for a hearing anyway. Stubborn people cling hardest when they're losing. The courtroom was small. Quiet. My biological parents sat at the plaintiff's table with tight expressions. Their lawyer shuffled papers like they might magically rearrange themselves into a winning argument. The judge reviewed the documents for all of 10 minutes. Then he leaned forward and said, "Mr. and Mrs. Hart, you have no legal, parental, or financial claim to Ms. Pierce or her adoptive father's estate. Your lawsuit is dismissed with prejudice." With prejudice. Meaning permanently. Meaning never again. My mother's face drained of color. My father looked down at his hands. The judge wasn't done. Furthermore, the court cautions you against further harassment or misrepresentation. Miss Pierce's rights are fully protected. I didn't smile. I didn't need to. Justice doesn't need to be loud to be final. Tap like if you believe quiet justice is still justice. Because that moment, I felt my dad beside me. 2 weeks later, I received one last letter from them. Not an apology. Not remorse. Just, "We hope one day you understand the pressure we were under." I didn't respond. Some doors must stay closed for healing to happen. I took Dad's folder, the one that saved me, and placed it back into the cabinet. I whispered, "Thank you," because without him, without his love and preparation, I would have been swallowed by people who only saw dollar signs where a child once stood. And for the first time in a long time, the echo of that airport didn't feel so loud. Here's what I learned. Family isn't who shares your DNA. It's who shows up. Who stays. Who writes affidavits to protect your future because they know the world might try to take it from you. And sometimes, the justice you get isn't flashy, it's a signature on a dismissal order, a truth preserved in paperwork, a lie exposed under fluorescent courtroom lights. I wasn't abandoned after all. I was redirected. Straight into the arms of the man who loved me enough to protect me even after he was gone. If this story hit something deep for you, subscribe for more stories like this. And tell me in the comments, who chose you when they didn't have to?